Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It is a lovely sunny Sunday morning here in the north of England. So after this, I'm going to be going out and sitting in my garden in the very rare sunshine that we have. I don't intend to talk non-stop for an hour and a half because I'm always very conscious, having taught pupils for nearly 27 years now, that even adults have a certain attention span. So I think we might hopefully finish a bit early, have a little bit of a chat as well. The title of this presentation is How Not to Moodle, but I actually think that that's a really presumptuous title. I mean, who are we to say how other people should or shouldn't Moodle? It depends on their own establishment's requirements and preferences, and it was something that Thomas was talking about in his keynote the other day that I listened to. So I'm going to qualify it a little bit, I think, and I'm going to call it How Not to Put People Off Moodle, really, because I think that's something that we could potentially have a consensus on. And it's always very important that your first impressions are positive ones. Last summer, well, summer for me, it was winter in Australia when I went to Sydney, to the Sydney Moodle Moot. Although, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell the difference between our summer and your winter, really. I left rainy London and arrived in rainy Sydney. The gentleman, Ian it was, who started off the proceedings, he said that apparently if you're going to do this presenting business on a regular basis, there's sort of an unwritten rule, it's de rigueur, that you have to show gratuitous photos of babies in your presentation. So these are my babies, although as you can tell they're somewhat older than babies now. One is 22 going on 23, my daughter, my son is 20 going on 21, so they're not really babies. On the other hand, they're not either gratuitous because they do have a role to play in what I'm going to talk about. And that is that they both sort of had kind of negative experiences of Moodle, or at least that's what they tell me. And whether that's the embarrassment of being the mother of Moodle Fairy, I don't know, but they're constantly teasing me and taunting me about it. My daughter is a graduate of the London School of Economics, and during the time that she was there, they moved from WebCT to Moodle. And she always tells me, how honest it is, I don't know, but she always tells me that WebCT was better than Moodle, easier to manage than Moodle. My son, he's just finished his second year at King's College London, and his department apparently are going from Blackboard to Moodle. And he's shown me his Blackboard, I've had a look at it, and he says, oh, it's fine. Well, why should we want to go to Moodle? I prefer Blackboard. And so you see, they're always teasing me that they think Moodle is somewhat dull, really, dull and uninteresting. And I do think that our earliest experiences, however adult we try to be about it and mature we try to be about it, it's our earliest experiences of things that do colour our judgments. I mean, an example from me is that I've always said I'm not a maths person, I don't do sums, I'm a word person. Whereas actually I think I'd be perfectly good at maths and adding up, and I've certainly got O-level, which is an English school leaving certificate in it. But when I was in primary school very early on, about aged 5, we had to do some sums, and I got some wrong, and the teacher, she crossed them out and X's in big red all over my book in the classroom, and I just burst into tears and came home and told my mum, I can't do it. And do you know, that scarred me for life, really. And I think, therefore, that it's very, very important that our first impression is extremely vital in how we're going to react to it after that. So basically, what I'm going to talk about during the next 50 minutes or so is how we can ensure that first impressions for teachers who are going to use Moodle in their courses, and also students who are going to come to Moodle, are such that they will want to carry on, okay? And so I'm going to just talk about little examples nothing. Oh, I've just knocked one of the stools over in my kitchen. I'm in my kitchen here with strict instructions to my husband, do not come in, so that I'm not going to be disturbed. A cautionary tale before we start then. One of the things that I'm asked to do sometimes is to go to schools or colleges and give them a talk. I think they call it, I don't like the term, I think they call it inspire in speech marks, meaning that you go into an establishment that's just starting with Moodle and you're going to try and convince them that it's a good thing to get into. And so I went to this school a couple of years ago. It was the start of their academic year, and they'd been told that they were going to get this virtual learning environment. And what I had to do was just stand in front of about 80 staff in their hall and tell them how great Moodle was. So I did that. I arrived, I went on, I did a slideshow, I showed them some videos. I said, oh, with Moodle you can do this, with Moodle you can do that. You can save on paper, you can, it'll save you loads of time. It's really great, you'll love it. It'll give you better quality of life and so on and so forth. And I ranted on for about an hour. And then I said, right, are there any questions? And one lady put her hand up, sort of slightly puzzled, looking a bit confused. And she said, oh, yes, I have a question. And I said, oh, great, excellent. I love answering questions about Moodle. And she said, well, my question is, what is Moodle? And her colleague sitting next to her sort of nudged her quietly and said, oh, she means the VLE. And all the way through, from when I arrived at the school and I spoke to the head teacher and then I started talking, it hadn't occurred to me that they didn't call their Moodle Moodle. They were just going to call it the VLE. And she'd been completely confused because she thought I was talking about something completely different from what they were going to be learning about in the next 12 months. There's a school up the road from us, for instance. They call their Moodle Chuckle. And I know several people, several establishments that call it a different name, or they even have had competitions to name it. So I've just noticed Carol in the chat that absolutely, step one, ensure you speak their language. Okay then, so let's just take it from the very, very beginning and imagine that we're going to go into a Moodle for the first time. And the first little section that I'm going to talk about I've called Lost in Space, and it's to do with the navigation, really, finding your way around, particularly if you're not used to that kind of online learning environment. It seems that there are many people who find Moodle's way of navigating a bit complicated and try to, what they think is, improve it. But sometimes what happens, basically, is that they make it worse and not better. And this is a perfect example of what I'm going to mention several times, is the fact that Moodle, being open source, is a huge advantage because it means that you can access the code and you can tweak it as you wish. But it's also a huge disadvantage because it means that anyone can access the code and they can tweak it as they wish. And sometimes they actually make it worse and not better. And I'm first of all going to talk about finding your way around so that you aren't kind of gone in, lost in space and given up at the first hurdle. For instance, one of the things that I notice people asking about in the Moodle help forums is they want to get rid of that navigation block. They find it a bit of an encumbrance. And in hiding the navigation block, sometimes, unless you've got a better solution, you're actually taking away a native way of finding your way around Moodle and getting into the My Moodle, which is another very easy way of locating your courses. So, if you take away the navigation block and you don't give them an easy way to My Moodle, harder to find your way around. Another thing I've noticed, I like the My Courses block from Moodle 1.9, and I still include it in Moodle 2s. But if you're an administrator, because you have so many courses, you tend to see the course categories. If you are a student who's never enrolled in any courses, again, you'll see the categories until you've been enrolled into one particular course, and then you see your courses. Now, if you are, say, an amateur theme designer or a network manager or an IT person who wants to tweak the navigation of Moodle, and I'll talk about the themes again in a moment, but you don't actually use it as a student and a teacher, you might not be aware of the different views that you have. And then you come into what you think is going to make it easier, but it's actually making it more complex for people to use because you've not used it yourself. And this is, again, I'm going to give you an excellent example and then talk about how in trying to make it better, you can actually get people lost in space. Fantastic new feature of Moodle 2 is that anybody can just add little fly-out menus at the top of your Moodle by going into the theme settings and adding a little bit of code through there. But if you're going to do that, make sure that the pages that you take people to that you think they need are the ones that they actually do need to help them navigate around. The schools, I'll just show you this picture. The schools in my area, that's the Lancashire and Cumbria, northwest England, there are about 700 plus of them, are all kind of managed, the Moodles, by our local broadband suppliers. And we started with Moodle in about 2006, and I'm convinced that they must have had an advisor, a consultant at the time, who had the idea that, oh, I know, because it's the schools and to make it look pretty and attractive, let's have on our front page, let's have the topic section included, and then we'll have pretty icons for each of the subjects so that you can easily see which subject it is you want. Looks nice. This is actually taken from a real Moodle somewhere near to me. I won't say who, obviously, but this is for real. It looks good at first, but the issue is, if you take away the navigation block in Moodle 2, or if you don't have the My Courses block, this is still 1.9, but the same applies. If you take away Moodle's native navigation, you're actually making it harder. Now, for instance, if you were a Year 9 pupil, that's 13-year-olds, I think, and you want to do your biology homework. Well, in this method, you'd have to click onto Science, and then it would take you into the category of science. And then you'd have to think, oh, am I Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 4? Key Stage 3 means that you're aged between 11 and 13. So then you'd click on Key Stage 3. And then it would say, okay, which year are you? Okay, I'm Year 9. So then you get on Year 9. And only then can you do your biology homework. So you've got 4 clicks before you can get to where you want to, because the person who's designed this hadn't actually thought it through, looking at it from the point of view of the, the student or also the teacher. Now, here's a good example. I'm not, I don't want to depress you by talking about poor examples. This is Lewis Carr. This is Leeds City College. And what they've done, apart from its beautifully web designed, so yeah, you've made your Moodle look a bit more like a website, you've made it funky, you've made it colourful, but you still remembered how students need to navigate around. So if you take a look at this, for instance, you come to this as your first impression, and what do you get? Oh, I need some help on Moodle. I'll click here. I don't know if you can see this because it's quite small, but if you want to go straight to your courses, you click My Moodle and it takes you straight there. If you need to search for and enroll in a new course, you just click on Search Courses and you can do that. And again, if the whole thing, I know I'm sort of keeping an eye on the chat, if the whole thing you find daunting and you can't even remember how to log in, you just got a neat logo and image there to help you how to log in. And that, I think, that is crucial in getting people new to Moodle to have a positive experience of it. Because if you can't find your way around, you aren't going to want to carry on searching through the maze, are you? Okay, so I'm talking about design. I was saying I think it was a cocktail hour last night, I don't know anything about web design or theme design. I've fiddled a little bit, but I don't. It doesn't stop me talking about it. I talk quite often about things that I don't know anything about. People tend to assume that I know more than I do. I know just enough terms to convince them that. But if they ever ask me any in-depth questions, I think I'd be lost. But if you take a look at this, imagine that we've actually managed to find our way to a course, and what we've got now is a plain course, 3 topics, and I bet that you are expecting me to now start dissing it and say, oh, this is very dull, you need to put images in, you need to pretty it up a bit, and so on and so forth. Well, I'm not, because actually, sometimes in trying to make things beautiful and to enhance them, again, you actually make it worse. This is, agreed, this is a very plain course, but if we take a look at the sections, you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. There's the first section, it says that you're going to learn. Second section, you're going to practice. Oh, things are all moving round. Oh, never mind. Okay, in the second section, it says that you have to practice, and each of the items is actually described. Oh, fantastic. And then you're going to be assessed, you're going to have some tests. So I admit it could be made a bit pretty with some images, but it does the job. And there are, for example, different course formats which can make it attractive yet still be functional. I'm looking forward to Moodle 2.3, where there's a setting in the course settings where you can just display one section at a time, for instance. That could be quite good. But you do have to be aware that sometimes less is more, and sometimes simple is actually better. There's one kind of workaround. People have always been trying to do workarounds to make course pages look more like web pages. And the fact is that they're not. Moodle's not a website. It doesn't have to try to emulate that. There's one that I'm kind of, well, not ashamed, but actually I don't use it myself anymore. It's this idea where you actually put icons or links in the top section that then link to the activities that you have in the very, very bottom section. And then the activities in your bottom section, you then, in the course settings, reduce the number of sections by 1. And they're called orphaned activities in Moodle 2. And I actually made a video years ago called Make Your Moodle course page look more like a web page. And I actually got so many views on YouTube that YouTube keep asking me if I want to have advertisements on it or promote things via it. I think that's what happens when you get a lot of hits. But I don't actually use that myself sometimes, because I think showing teachers how to use it is more complicated than just simply having them in straight sections. It has a place. We have got it in some of our courses in my school Moodle, but you don't have to do it. I do accept, of course, we've got that horrendous scroll of death, but again, there are ways around the scroll of death course formats that are simple to use, that don't involve a lot of workarounds. The title there, I'm talking about web designer despair, and again, it's what I'm saying about the benefit of Moodle is that anyone can get the code and tweak it, so you don't have to be a professional themer or a professional IT person. However, this is also a huge disadvantage, and I've got there a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I went to a school, this is a true story again, I went to a school in Cheshire a couple of years ago who were just, oh yeah, I'm just looking at Richard there, Mary Evans seems beautiful, yeah. I went to a school in Cheshire who were starting up Moodle, and they wanted me to train the teachers on how to edit courses and so on. But their Moodle, because they were just starting, it wasn't on the internet, it was actually just on their server inside the school. So I didn't get a chance to play with it before I went to the school. But I thought, well, that doesn't matter. Moodle's Moodle, you know, it'll still all be the same. So I arrived at the school and I got the staff into their training room and we took a look at their Moodle, my first encounter, and it was beautiful. It was blue, beautiful blue. It was matched the school website. It had been made by their network manager. He wasn't a professional, but he knew enough to sort of tweak a theme, and he'd got it the same colour, the same sort of design as their school website. They have blue in the school colours, so it was a blue and gold banner. The school uniform is blue, and it was just lovely. So what I said to the teachers was, okay, we're going to go into a course, and then when you've got your editing turned on, the first thing that we'll do is we will click that hand and pen icon into a topic summary, and we'll write a little bit about what the topic summary that is about. And so they all got in, they turned on their editing, and they clicked the hand and the pen to edit this summary, and this is what they saw. It was all completely blue. Everywhere where you had to edit was blue because the guy who'd done it hadn't actually gone in as a teacher or a student to try and to test it all. He just thought, oh, right, blue, 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 change all of this to blue. And he'd not actually used it himself, which brings me back to the things I was talking about, the navigation. You've got to try it out. So I thought, never mind, all we'll have to do is we'll just switch, because I had administrator rights, we'll just switch to the standard theme. So we switched to the standard theme, and guess what? It didn't make the slightest difference. It was all still blue. I don't know about theming, obviously, but he must have overwritten everything on that Moodle. So for the rest of the day, as we were training the staff, what I did was we wrote our words in white. So we got the font coloured white. We wrote it all in white so that we could see what we were doing. And then we had to select everything, change the colour back to black before we saved the changes so that we could see it on the course page, because the course page colour was still normal, which is presumably why he never thought that anything was wrong. They were so accommodating and helpful, which was really nice, because the network manager was off sick that day anyway, so he couldn't have even fixed it. But what an introduction to Moodle. You know, your first impression is that you've got to spend most of your time doing it in different colours, changing it in different colours, simply to see what you've done. So, unfortunate, really. Okay. So, let's move on, talk about something else now. Oh, my man is working. Her animated GIF there. You can't meet an animated GIF. I've called this bit Imagination Meltdown. And this guy is, he is a college tutor. It's the end of a long, long working day. And he's been told that he's got a 2-hour training session, CPD insert, after his work, learning how to use Moodle. He's not negative about Moodle. It's just that, you know, he has other things to do and he's tired and he doesn't have much of an imagination for it at the moment. Now, according to how the training has been set up, if it's an external trainer, he might well be giving each person a generic login, teacher 1, teacher 2, that's fine. If it's an internal trainer, or if it's someone who's made the effort to find out about who the people are, he might have his own name. And then what will sometimes happen is, I know, Teresa, yes, what will sometimes happen is he will then be told, right, here is your course, we're going to go through some activities. First of all, we'll make a forum, say, so make a forum and think of a subject for your discussion that relates to your curriculum area. And his mind goes blank because he's tired. And of course, when you're given completely free rein to think of something, you can't think of anything. I know, for example, I went to the supermarket and there was a young mum there, and she had 3 children. They must have been aged about 6 or 7. And she said to them, "All right, children, what do you want for your tea?" And I thought, my goodness, she's never going to get that problem sorted. They're never going to agree. When you've got so much choice, they aren't going, they're just not going to know what to think. So something that I started doing, which works really well, and I actually got the idea from Glenys Hansen, who's a Moodling lady in France, and she does it in French, is that rather than try and wake up people's tired minds or work on their own personalities, because sometimes you yourself can be a little bit dull at times, is I actually give them personalities of celebrities. And the cheesier the celebrity, or the more B-list the celebrity, or the more infamous a celebrity, actually, the more entertaining it is, and it kind of sparks off a little bit of imagination as to what you're going to use the activities for. Is George Michael here? I mean, the person who was George Michael had a field day on that training session. It's also a good icebreaker because it means that you have a little bit of humour in the room as you're learning to use Moodle. And then when you have to go and you have to set up a forum or an assignment, you've got someone else's personality to work on. And I do think it's entertaining, really. So we're in our course. We are a cheesy celebrity. What happens next, again, depends on the approach that you're going to take. This is something that I'm hugely guilty of, what I call information overload. It's that often if you've used Moodle yourself, you're so keen to get teachers or tutors using it that you just go through one activity, another activity, this resource, that resource, until it's too much for them to take and they don't have any... Oh my goodness, Stefan, that's right, yeah. Well, do you know what, Stefan? I deliberately chose not to pick a picture of Hitler, but to pick a picture of Charlie Chaplin playing Hitler, because I thought that would be more acceptable. Okay. Anyway, the point is, if your trainer is dictatorial and saying that throughout the day we'll do this, this, and this, you as a tutor, you don't have the time to think and to play, and it's all a question of balance and manageable chunks. So here we are, back at Lewis Carr's Leeds City College again. I tweeted yesterday that I was going to big him up. I took a look around their Moodle and at Lewis's presentation notes, and I saw that what they do is they have small chunks, small periods of training on specific things. Like, here's an example, 60 minutes on learning how to create assignments. That's great, and there are several others. There are half-hour sessions. And then on the site again, or in this leaflet, it says, we also have a detailed support page on Moodle with screencasts, printable help sheets and tutorials. So you're catering for the different learning styles. Some people like watching screencasts, some people just like reading text. It's great. The only thing I'd say is I am a huge pedant. I actually put an item in the Moodle tracker yesterday about pedantry. I wanted a comma changed to a semicolon. So after on your list of courses, it should be a full stop and a capital letter, or at least a semicolon. But apart from that, this is a really good example of getting the right balance for teachers who are new to Moodle and need to learn its features without having the total information overload. Manageable chunks is important. This next one is something that my line manager, who's in charge of Moodle at my school, Mark Greenwood, he set up. We got Moodle in 2006, and I wasn't involved in it. I'm the gopher. He's in charge. He does it all, but I just do the work. And he had the idea that every week on a Wednesday we have what we call a staff briefing. It's basically a 15-minute meeting with our head teacher before school begins, where he talks about the meetings that are going on, the events, the trips, and so on. And so Mark decided that every Wednesday, just for 2 minutes, literally, he would actually get a member from a different learning area, different curriculum area, just to share with the others how they were using Moodle. Nothing fancy, but just to spark off ideas in other departments. He deliberately didn't choose techie people or ICT people, Because you do find that gets to be a bit negative. They're thinking, well, the ICT department, of course, they know how to do it. So it shows areas such as physical education, which you wouldn't normally associate with online courses because they're out on the fields playing soccer or whatever. What they actually did there was they showed videos that they'd made that they put onto Moodle to talk about how to show the students how to do, for instance, different trampoline jumps or different moves in soccer, for instance. Just a 2-minute soundbite that just gives other teachers an idea, and then they would go and then they would ask that teacher, well, how did you use that? And then they could go and try it out themselves. So there's just one other idea there. I'm going to come back now to the initial training and something that I call too much sand in the sand pit. There's this a popular way of getting people to learn Moodle, teachers to learn Moodle, which is giving them, well, I'm never quite sure if it's called a sand pit or a sandbox, to be honest, but either way, it's an empty course. Here's an example here where they can just play. Here's your own sandpit area. You've teacher rights and you can't break anything, so experiment away. Now, again, for some of us, and for me, for instance, this would have been great because all I want to do is just click lots and lots of buttons until I can work out what it is I want to do. And that's how I first learned Moodle in 2006. Hugely frustrating in the end, at the beginning, but eventually I got to work it out. But it doesn't always work with all kinds of people, because some people, the total freedom, again, completely, they're floundering. They're like that little boy, they're up to their head in sand where they can play. And so again, it's like the mother asking the children, what do you want for your tea? You need a limited amount of direction. You need balance between directed activities, be they a whole day, an hour or half an hour, and actually the freedom to play, I think, the freedom to practice. I'm a terrible one for not giving people enough time to practice, but I don't think it's necessarily useful just giving a complete empty course and letting people play away. I want to come back to that thing that I mentioned about giving them a different personality, which will waken them up a bit. And here I want to promote the MultiRanger School, because if you are completely new to Moodle, there's no point either putting you in as a course directly as a teacher and making you create activities when you don't know what they do, or giving you a sandpit to create activities, again, which you don't know what they are. So MultiRanger School is a nice little introduction. It's the school demo, school.demo.moodle.net. And basically what it does is it replicates teachers, students, and specifically courses in different subject areas of a real school. And all the courses are guest access. There is at least one course, sometimes several, in every subject category except maths, and I think maths will be coming online this week. And so you can log in as a student or a teacher and you can actually see how things work in a real school, because of course many Moodles are closed behind passwords because of privacy issues with student data, so you can't see that. But this gives you the opportunity to do that. You can log in as a student and see work that has been graded for you. You can log in as a teacher and see courses where you have graded stuff, and it gives you a nice introduction because it is really important. And again, I'm coming back to when we were talking about navigating your way through a course. We've got to see how it works from the student point of view. They are our raison d'être, if you like. They're the people ultimately who we are designing the courses for, and so we need to know how it is displayed and how it works for them. Something again that I do is before we go in and learn Moodle, I'll give people a course. This is one that is available. I just made this up with lots of different activities. Doesn't really teach you Moodle and mountaineering, but it has a range of activities, lesson, wiki, assignment, choice, and so on, which enables teachers to try them out from the student point of view. So, for instance, they would do an assignment. What equipment do you need to spend a night in the mountains? And then, according to how many people there are in the group, if there's not 32 or something, I will try actually at the time to grade some of them so they can see how they're graded from the student's point of view, so that then when they go to learn how to set up activities in Moodle, they already know what it is that they're doing and how it will be seen from the student's viewpoint. There's again a little caveat here, which is that in a Moodle course as a teacher, you do have this switch role to student facility, which is good for a quick display to check things. I use it for checking if I've set up conditional activities, for example, that they work, but it isn't foolproof. And there are some things, such as forums in separate groups or the way assignments are displayed, that don't actually work properly when you're a teacher switching your role to student. So I would always encourage Moodle administrators to actually create a real/fake student account that teachers can use to test things out. This is Johnny Depp. He's my fake student. I take him with me everywhere. See, I've got Moodles loaded full of these kind celebrities who let me use them for my training. And it's much better then because you are using a real student account instead of switching your role. Teachers don't have the ability that admins have to log in as, and of course it's got lots of privacy issues. So this is a good way of doing it, really. Okay, Heidi Klum. Okay, right. So we're now going to look at the actual types of resources or activities that you would add. Now you've had your, now you've got your training and you've been in your sandpit and so on. So the next section I'm talking about, I call it Blinded by the Shiny. And again, this is something that's rebounded on me big time. This is my fault here. If you take a look at this next slide, this is a real slide. This is taken from my school. And this is taken from a maths course. Year 7, that's 11-year-olds. They've just started high school. And extension means that these pupils for whom this is designed are at the crème de la crème, the top class, and they need extension work to challenge them more. And so this is what they're given. And how dull is this? A long, long list of Word documents, not even interactive. And however motivated an 11-year-old you might be, that is not going to turn you on at all. So what I've been doing for the last few years, and this is where it's rebounded on me, is I've been showing this as a poor example, and then I've been saying, oh, so there are, and then I've been saying, what you need, Moodle, because it's online, you don't have to have just Word documents, you don't have to have text. You can have lovely images, you can have videos, you can put sound files on, and you don't need to know all this fancy coding to be able to put videos on, because Moodle does it automatically for you. And people have thought, oh, great, fantastic. So here's a slide of a course in our French department. And you look at it and you think, oh, that's nice. But actually, it's just as bad as the long, long list of Word documents, if you think it through. These are individual videos, all on a course page, designed to encourage the children to opt for a language, French, in their exam course. These are different people using French in a business environment. But actually, it's exactly the same. Instead of putting a list of Word documents, it's just a whole load of videos just bunged on a page. And what could happen? Well, you could, in theory, play all of them at the same time, which would be quite chaotic. Or think how long it would take for that page to load. So you really need a balance between different types of resources and different types of activities. Just casting a glance over the chat there, I saw Teresa saying about, I'm worried with the great drag and drop of files. Me too. That's absolutely right. The advantage is that it's going to motivate newbie Moodlers because it's a lot easier to add resources in. The disadvantage is that we are going to get a scroll of death of Word documents or what have you, big time, unless it's explained how you do need a balance. Amia, I like the subpage module too. I did a video about that. I think that's a nice way of using resources as well. So I'm coming back to balance. Balance in terms of what kind of resources you add. Also, balance in terms of activities. I'm very, very keen to stress that the more activities you have rather than static resources, obviously the more engaging your course will be. But again, you need a balance with that. This is deliberate. I've put the boy back here because he's actually drowning in feedback. I don't know how it is where you are, but in the UK, after 200 plus years of official government required education in schools, we've recently realised that it might be useful if we actually listened to some of our students and what they wanted out of the course. And so we have something called student voice, whereby we have to survey them on how they feel their teachers are delivering the learning, how challenging they think the work is, and so on and so forth. Now, Moodle lends itself fantastically to that because it has not only forums, not only choices, but also the feedback module, the questionnaire module. But again, you've got to keep it in balance. Take a look here. This is a screenshot of only some of the surveys. We use a questionnaire module in my school that our students are expected to do. Every class has a 20-minute session every week to go into a computer room and fill in some surveys. Now, for instance, every single subject, they have to fill in a survey. We've got here, what do you think of history, design, technology, English? That's just a few examples where they have to rate the teachers. They have to say how well they think they're learning, how good they think the behaviour is. Up here, we've got a questionnaire where they have to talk about attitudes in and around the school. How many sports do they do in and out of school? How good they think the grading is by teachers. And then again, every year group has a general survey about general aspects in school. And the surveys are so long that we can't even fit them into a 20-minute session. So they have to do them over 2 weeks. We've got part 1 and part 2. And if you are the senior management, the head teacher and his cronies, you think this is fantastic because you have so much data that you can use, that you draw from this. We are due to have an inspection, we call it Ofsted, and any day now they are going to knock on our doors and inspect our school. And I think that they are going to love this. They're going to think it's great. But if you ask a student of any age, this is dire. This is, oh no, not another survey again. You know, what do you think of what's your opinion of the crisp packet lying in the yard? What do you think of the colour of the paint in the boys' toilets? Well, they're not real, but I can easily imagine them being asked that. So it is moderation, isn't it? The feedback module, student voice, great. But just like all of them, you want a balance between different types of static resources, different types of interactive resources. I talk about this student voice, and I actually get some people who say, well, you should be grateful because actually I've set up forums, I've even tried that new Moodle 2 comments block, and I don't get anyone to answer. No one gives me any feedback at all. And if you take a look, that's possibly not the fault of Moodle. It's possibly the way that you are phrasing your questions or setting up your forum or your comments block. And again, I think we mentioned this was discussed in Thomas's keynote, how you ask the questions is going to be very, very influential on what kind of feedback or responses you get. So, for example, we've got a forum here. Ask any questions you have about the course. Well, if you're a mature adult on an adult learning course, if you are an intelligent university student, you might have it in you to think of the question that you need and to ask it there. But anyone else, we're back into the sandpit. We're back into the what do you want for your tea? It's too vague. It's too wide. Specific questions might get more specific answers. And if you take a look at my comments block there, I don't know about you, but if I were to put that in my school, post your quick feedback, I'd get instant silly comments or abuse or completely unrelated things. So they are to be used judiciously, really, I think, and you will get back what you put into it. And if you just ask a random question, like if you just give a random sandpit course, you're not going to get back what you would hope. In terms of the forum, by the way, I'm actually sort of a bit of a control freak, I think. I'm one of those people who loved the idea that we were going to get conditional activities because however against the pedagogy of Moodle they might be, it meant that I could decide when my students could access which activities precisely. So when we're talking about the forum module, I prefer the single simple discussion, simply because you can ask your question and all the learners can do is click reply to answer it. However, the standard, for all the students, and if you want them to raise new topics, the default standard forum is fine. But what I have noticed is that aside of the fact that it enables them to add a new discussion topic that's completely off your discussion topic, if people are brand new to Moodle and they're not familiar with the way forums work, I've noticed that they sometimes, instead of replying to a particular discussion that you've started, they start new discussions because they think that's what they're supposed to do. They click the add a new discussion topic when they were supposed to reply to another one. So it's a lack of understanding of how they work. And again, if you're a new person learning Moodle, you do really need to know different ways in which you can use comments or forums or feedback and so on. So I want to show you what's new in Moodle 2.3, which is brilliant. Yeah, Carol, I agree there. Which is brilliant, which is now, when we have Moodle 2.3, when you click to choose a resource or an activity, it will actually give you some help as to what it does, and also some good examples as to how you might like to use it. So, and even if you're not going to pick that one, you can click into any button and it will explain it for you in simple text and then show you ways that you might want to try it out with. And I think that's a huge improvement because for a newbie Moodler, and again, if you're playing on your own using Moodle, it's instant help on the spot, particularly the examples. Because again, you might understand that a choice is where you set up some choices, but you might think, well, how would I want to use it? Here are some ideas. For some of them, obviously, we were talking about forum. There are lots of different types of forum, and there are different ways that you can use forums. So it could be quite long down the column on the right, giving examples. So for each of these, you can click at the bottom where it says more help, and then it takes you straight to the Moodle documentation, the 2.3 documentation, where you can see more help. And I know there are loads of books out there on Moodle. Pact seems to have cornered the market. But the documentation is the most up-to-date documentation. Amir, it is redundant for non-newbies, but then you don't have to read it, do you? Because all you have to do is you just click chat and then add, and then you're there, really, I suppose. So that's something that I think will help newbie Moodlers in 2.3. So going back to how not to put people off Moodle or some other of my thoughts, this is Molière, 17th century French writer, and he wrote comedies with a social conscience, and this is L'Avare, the miser. And he's a miser because he has lots of money in that bag there, and he doesn't want to share it with anybody else and make other people happy. And this, sadly, this kind of miserly attitude, I've noticed is quite prevalent in teachers in education, where they don't want to share what it is that they're doing. I'll give you another example from my school. I just have to mention that my school is a great school that uses Moodle in lots of great ways, but because this is how to not to put people off Moodle, I'm just going to show you some of the negatives. I did a presentation last year at the iMoot where I showed you lots of nice things about my school. So I hope I've got my balance scales there. One of my roles within the school, as well as Moodle, is to help the existing staff improve their ICT skills. For instance, I help them do some more work on spreadsheets or improve their word processing skills. So I had a science teacher come to me before Easter, and she said to me, Robin, you're ahead of me there, by the way. She said to me, could you show me how to make a distribution list in Outlook email? I said, yeah, that's fine. She said, the reason why is because I've got these PowerPoints I've done for science, for exam revision, and I want to send them, I want to email them to all of my class. So I need to know how to make a distribution list in Outlook to save myself time. And I said, well, yes, I can do that, but would you not rather I showed you how to put it onto Moodle in your Moodle course? Because that would be much simpler. And she said, oh no, I already know how to put it on Moodle. But if I put it on Moodle, then my colleague, who shall remain nameless, she'll take my work, and she's always taking stuff and she never gives stuff back. So I don't want her to see my PowerPoints because she'll just use them in her class and I put all that effort into them. So that's why I want to email them in a distribution list to my class so they don't go on Moodle. And that is quite prevalent and it's really sad. I've gone to establishments where they've already set up the course structure in Moodle, and they've actually set up different courses for different tutors. And it isn't because they don't understand about using groups. It isn't because they don't have to, because they don't realise that if you have several teachers in a course, you can separate your classes in the gradebook using groups. It's because they actually don't want to share their resources. So Mrs. Smith has got her own course with just her stuff, totally separate from Mr. Smith. What a shame. Now, the opposite side of the coin to that, I think it was it Robin who mentioned that obviously, is Mooch, Moodle.org Community Hub. And the grand idea behind this is that if you have a course that you think might be of use to others, if you're quite pleased with it and you think it's got a good balance, then if you're in Moodle 2 and you've registered with Mooch, you can upload it and other people can use it. The other side of the coin is you can actually go to Mooch and then you can search for a course that might be in your subject area and download it and use it in your Moodle. And something that I'm quite keen to point out is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to use all of the course. You might, because most of them, they're all supposed to, they don't always, but most of them are supposed to have a link where you can view the course before you download it to see if it's suitable for you. But you can download the course and then you can just adapt or use the bits of it that you want and get rid of the other bits and then tweak it according to you. So there might be a course you download with just a few quizzes that you want. Use those. It's just a great way of sharing resources. And what a contrast and what a direct opposite from the attitude of these teachers who want to be the miser and keep all their money or all their PowerPoints to themselves. However, if you are going to do that, then the next slide and the next little section also is something to bear in mind. This idea that because you are inside a walled garden, because Moodle is hidden behind a password, no one will ever know if you put anything copyrighted on. Or Graham, the Mooch link is hub.moodle.org, I think. Maybe someone would like to type that into the chat for me. Yeah, even though you're behind a password, you still need to bear in mind that you can't just rip stuff off the internet or put in commercial stuff that you weren't allowed to put in. And the idea that nobody will ever know. There is an ex-professor of languages called Graham Davis, and he's very active on Twitter in what we call the MFL Twitterati. It's a great name. It's basically a global group of languages teachers and people interested in languages who use Twitter to share resources and ideas. So we call ourselves the MFL Twitterati. And Graham Davies tells a true story about a Moodle that was in the area near where he lives. And the school was using yes, Stefan, the school was using the POS method of parental access, which I only discovered a while ago. I think it might have been the Americans who invented it. It stands for Parent Over Shoulder. And basically what they do is, instead of using this highly complicated parent login, which is very, very difficult to set up, they advise their parents that if you want to see what your child is doing in Moodle, just stand behind them as they log in and watch where they go and watch the work that they do. And so this parent was doing that. He was standing behind his son as his son was accessing Moodle to do some homework. And he noticed that some of the resources that his son were doing were actually commercially produced products that were not allowed to go on a virtual learning environment without a license. And the reason he knew that was because his friend was the director of the company who'd actually made the resources. So he went and he phoned his friend, the director of this company, and he got in touch with the school, and the school got into a lot of trouble, and they got sued for putting these on without permission. Now, the fact is the school had done this nobody will ever know, thinking, well, our students aren't going to be bothered whether it's copyrighted or we're allowed or not. But they hadn't taken into consideration the fact that they were allowing extra people, such as parents, who might have connections with it, to go in and to see it. So it is something very important to bear in mind there. Moodle is unforgiving. Moodle displays things that you might not necessarily want people to see or to be aware of. And I've just got a few more slides now, and I'm going to finish and talk a little bit about that, about how Moodle can sometimes get you into bother, if you like. It's what I like to call the dates of doom. As you know, the reports, the logs in Moodle are fantastic for if you want to check that someone has accessed something, if you want to make sure that your students have uploaded their assignments. They're great. But sometimes you might not necessarily want these dates to display something that's most unfortunate. Here's an example. Imagine that you are a potential customer in a Moodle site, and you're wandering around, you're looking at the pages that are available and the resources with a view perhaps to enrolling into a course, and you see this. What are we today? 26th of May. Last modified Thursday the 16th of December 2010. Now, what does that tell you about that Moodle? It tells you that they don't care enough to update it more frequently. Now, it could be that this has come from a page that is a static page of information, terms of conditions, a syllabus that doesn't need to be updated. But there's no reason why you can't just go in and change a comma, change a few words, simply so that the date gets updated and it looks as if you're bothered. I was searching around in the Moodle forums for people. You can actually remove that with the CSS, but what if you don't know how to do that? It's never a bad idea just to keep things updated. And I'm not just talking about pages where that last modified appears, but your resources as well. It's certainly true that from one year to the next, you might have activities that you're going to reuse, but adding new information, tweaking a little bit, changing some of the questions is always good, because it makes it look as if you're bothered, that you're committed, and the students or the potential learners need to know that. Here's another example, and I'm going to use myself for this, obviously. It's the gradebook. As I said before, the gradebook is fantastic because you can no longer have these confrontations with learners where they say, I've done my work, I handed it in on paper, but you've lost it. Because it's either there, the time, the day that they sent it in, or it isn't. And there's no getting away from that. But equally, the date that the teacher actually graded the work is also present. And here's something that I did last year. And yeah, well done to me because I was doing my work on a Sunday morning. That's very good. If you are the line manager of a teacher, then you can see when the teacher was working. That's great. If you are an inspector, you can also see. But if you take a look at it a bit more closely, I must have been so committed to thoroughly checking their work that I was actually marking these with less than a minute in between them. 11:22, 11:22, 11:23. That's total commitment, that is, or not. Now, in this instance, in my defense, I would say that I was in class when they uploaded them, so I'd already looked at them. But if we are going to motivate our students and get our students using it, then I think we have to be just as committed to the work that we do and grade and put on Moodle as what I'd like to think we're doing with the work that's offline on Moodle as well. And so this is something that I would need to rectify, really. So basically, that's just coming back to making the first impressions, whether it be of students or of teachers, positive ones, such that you really do want to go in and either add more activities, getting the balance right, or go in and do more activities, getting the balance right as a student. It's all a question of balance. Everything that I've talked about, including the things that I don't know much about, like the themes and the navigation, it's a question of balance and keeping an eye on the chat there. You're talking about that as well. All resources dull, all activities dull. Mix too many of one or the other, dull. Just getting the right balance. And if we can do that, then hopefully in the early stages, then we can help people to actually like Moodle. If they've got a positive beginning with Moodle, then, and only then, we can actually then have this discussion that Thomas started off yesterday as to what are the better ways to Moodle, how to Moodle in terms of, I put it in speech marks, best practice, because as I started, I'm coming right back to the very, very beginning here. Who are we to say, how one institution should Moodle or how another institution should Moodle? But it's a nice one to have a discussion around. I'm going to stop there because it's 11:05, and as I said, I wasn't going to talk for an hour and a half. We'll have a little chat. I'll try and catch up with everything that was in the chat there, and then one of us at least is going to go out and sit in the garden for a little while and feel very guilty about not doing her work for the coming week. So thank you. That's this presentation can go up online anywhere, whatever, for people to take a look at. Thank you, and I'll just stop talking for now. You're welcome.
Well, Julian here. Just as questions are starting to come in and before people start to disappear, look, obviously, I want to do a big thank you to Mary. That was an absolutely fantastic presentation, and I think those points are incredibly valid. Some obvious, some not so obvious, and I certainly think many people got a lot out of that. So again, please don't think this is closing the session down. We still have time for questions, so please do throw them in. But just on behalf of the iMoot team, Mary, thank you very much for taking the time this weekend to come speak to us and our attendees, and yeah, thank you.
Stefan, yes, definitely. Stefan, what's your definition of the North? Liverpool, all right, yes, I can manage Liverpool. Yeah, that's just a short train journey away. Ziggy, I would love to meet you at a point in time as well. When is Moodle Munich?
So I'm seeing lots of chat going on here. Any questions for Mary? I know there's been so many points raised here. I'm very keen to make sure that those who have questions do get them out before we have to disappear.
Diggy, I can do part of I could speak partly in German and partly in English if I practiced beforehand. My German isn't as fluent as my French. I've been to France and I've done some training in French. That was a lot of fun. But I don't know a lot of the Moodle words in German. When I was at school, I preferred French, I'll be honest with you. But I can speak, maybe, en français, oui. I can speak enough German to get by. All right. Moodle.